In episode 2 of Zero to Hero, we will be continuing the series where we go through everything in the game and everything that you need to know in Call of Dragons in order to succeed and maximize the efficiency of your account and find the fastest way to grow and snowball off that. In this episode, we will be going through everything that you need to know about the commanders, so stick around to find out more. What is going on? What's up, guys? Yeah, we're here back with a brand new video. This is episode 2 of the Zero to Hero series, where we'll be going through and breaking down every single aspect of the game, what tricks you can use to grow and overtake your competition, and well, just in general mechanics that you might not know about the game. So in this episode, we'll be going through the commanders, which is one of the most important core functions of the game. I will be breaking down what the commanders trees mean, what their attributes mean, which commanders to pair with who, and I will also say at the end a sort of mini tier list. Tier list, if you would like to call that, of which commanders to focus on first when you're starting out. Now, I will not be breaking this down whether if you're a free to play or a pay to win, because this list applies to both, as most of the commanders are very easy to obtain without excluding the exclusive VIP commanders, which are Hosk and Lilia, which each cost actual money in order to get and level up and whatnot. So, without further ado, let's get started. And now, in Call of Dragons, your main backbone to do anything really is based off commanders and artifacts. But in this episode, we'll be discussing mostly the commanders and what to use, what to pair them, etc., etc., etc. So, starting off with commanders, you'll notice that there are three rarities of commanders: the common, the epic, and the legendary. Now, as usual, legendary is obviously the highest tier, which is usually has the best tier of commanders, while epics are middle of the pack, and blue commanders, which are the commons, are usually just reserved for gatherers. And one of them is a construction, or rather an engineering commander, which is Ordo. But I'll break down every single part of that right now. So each commander has three main attributes. So, for example, we'll be using Nico as the first example in how our attributes affect the commander and their skills and whatnot. So we'll be using Nico as our test commander pretty much. Nico has three main attributes, which is marksman, engineering, and precision. So that means he has access to the three corresponding talent trees: marksman, engineering, and precision. Each commander has three main attributes, and these three main attributes reflect towards the talent trees that they have access to. Also, sometimes some of the talent trees synergize with their corresponding skills. Like, for example, Valiant here has a lot of CC, so he has access to the control tree. Nico has a building, engineering bonus while building, so he has access to engineering tree, etc., etc., etc. You get the point. Some commanders have peacekeeping abilities, so they get access to the peacekeeping trees and whatnot. But yeah, each commander has their own set build. I have some videos about the commanders in the commander series, which I should really go back to and finish, and might even need to revise some of the talent trees because my perspective on the game has changed the more I played and everything. So I think some of the trees could use some improvements. I will revisit them eventually, but for now, I just want to finish the Zero to Hero series. Anyway, so let's go for pairings. Now, there are four types of troops, as we discussed before: infantry, archers, mages, and cavalry, which corresponds to four types of commanders. There are commanders for infantry, like Madeline; commanders for mages, or flying celestials, Velian, like Velian. There are mages. There are commanders for archers, like Nico, and there are commanders for cavalry, like Bakshi. There are also a fifth type of commander, which is the gathering commanders, like in this, but we'll leave those to the very end because we want to discuss the juicy stuff, which is the commander pairings for PvP and such. So for PvP, for archers, we're going to start with archers. I would say, let's say you have access to Nico, Kenara, Guanwin, Hosk, and Craig. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you are working on commanders is to always level up the first skill before you proceed on building anything else. If you have not leveled the first skill, I do not recommend even going past the first star till you do. Here in Indus, I did this mistake where I skilled her up, but she is a gatherer, so she's a special exception. But we'll build on that later, on the later note. So say, for example, I have Nico, I have Hosk, I have Guanwin, and I have Craig, and I have Kenara. And you might ask me, hey, Meower, I have those five. How do I build my archer marches? In my opinion, I would say if you want to build an archer march and you want to maybe run 2 archer marches, I would say you would run Nico along with Craig if both of them are high enough level and Craig is awakened. Note this only applies if Craig or Guanwin are awakened. I would say run Nico with Craig. Reason being is that Craig's last ability applies a huge dot and has one of the highest damage factors of anything in the game, which synergizes pretty well with Nico's defense break. You can also run Kinara along with Guanwin just to apply this huge DPS constantly over and over again, and both of them synergize rather together. Or you can go for the Whaley route and just run Nico along with Kenara. You can run Nico along with Hosk, but Hosk is one of those commanders who's a generalist commander, but he should always be deputy. You should never run Hosk as primary if you're using archers or mages or whatever in any pairing. Hosk should always be the secondary. Back to pairings with archers. So let's revise. So the main march you should go for is Nico Kenara. If you don't want to go for that, you can go for Nico Craig and Kenara Guanwin. Craig and Guanwin work just fine together, but I do not recommend them running with each other. So if you want to use your Guanwin and Craig and you spend some time building them up, awakening them and such, so run Nico Craig, run Kenara Guanwin. You can also run Nico Hosk, and you can run Kenara Hosk, but Kenara Hosk is not that recommended. It's not the same as Nico Hosk. But as time goes on, maybe my opinion on that would change. So one last time, top 3 archer marches: Nico Kenara, Nico Hosk, Kenara Hosk, and then those other 2 are if you have multiple options and you want to experiment and such as Nico Craig and Kenara Guanwin. Now, moving on to the mages, Lilia Velian is the go-to. It's the best mage march at the moment in the game by far, because Velian, I was wrong about him. He's actually super strong. Even if this skill, which is his main skill, the Frozen Star, decreases damage dealt to each target by a certain percentage, which I would assume would be 15% after each, he would still be doing much more skill damage than Waldir, for example. So the first march you could start with is Waldir Lilia, with Waldir as the primary and Lilia secondary, just to make use of this talent, which is Boiling Blood. But after you get your Velian up and you have your Lilia up and running, you should always run Lilia primary and Velian secondary. You can also run a secondary mage march, which would be Velian Alwyn or Waldir Alwyn or Alwyn Waldir. I would prefer running Alwyn Waldir because this march would be more of a utility CC march, applying the gloom, the freeze, and all the slows that and dots that Velian provides, along with access to the control tree. So essentially, you'll be running 2 main mage marches, which would be Lilia Velian and Alwyn Waldir. These 2 would be the best mage marches. I don't recommend using anything else for mages. Maybe you could try out Thea, but there are just better options now that Velian is out. Before Velian is out, I would say maybe try to run Lilia Thea or Lilia Hosk, but with the existence of Velian, those 2 marches are completely obsolete. Moving on to the infantry. Infantry is very straightforward. You can get Madeline from the wheel, which is relatively easy to get even if you're free to play, since you only need 10 marches to 10 tokens to get her, and then you can just start working on her from the VIP to get her shards and everything. So already got VIP 8, which is relatively easy for a free to play player to get. So your infantry should always be Madeline, Nika. Don't use Garwood. Garwood is absolutely useless. He is by far, at the moment, a completely worthless and useless commander. I just don't see a scenario where he's ever useful. Don't use Garwood. If you use Garwood, then I have bad news for you. You're never going to be as useful as someone running Madeline Nika. Now, this Madeline Nika is pretty much currently the only viable infantry march, whether if it's in open field or in garrison, or even in rallies. If you're rallying with infantry, Madeline Nika is always go to. You can try a spicy build where we go Nika primary and Madeline secondary, but then you lose out on the tank and infantry tree synergy. While Nika has skill and infantry, but the skill tree has no synergy with infantry whatsoever. So you might as well just go for Madeline and Nika. That's the only viable infantry march for now. You could also run Nika Bakar, since that's also easy to get, and both of them are super free to play. And Bakar is actually a pretty damn good um, commander for an epic commander. He provides a lot of value and a lot of tankiness and a lot of damage as well. Plus, his Awakened skill has huge synergy with Nika's Awakened skill. Both of them act as a semi-bleed execute. So if you're fighting someone that has less than 50%, you're just going to melt them. So one more time for infantry, Madeline Nika or Nika Bakar. Don't use Garwood. If you use Garwood, use him at your own risk. He's worthless. There's no reason you should ever use him. He does no damage. He just fills up your hospital and not even that good of a tank. Moving on to cavalry. Cavalry, in my recommendation for it, don't use cavalry unless you have Bakshi Emrys. Bakshi is the reason why cavalry is currently viable, because he gives them some much needed sustain in form of increasing their HP and increasing even more HP, while Emrys provides just raw damage and a rage engine pretty much. So Bakshi Emrys becomes like a rage skill spamming machine. You could also try to run Emrys Alistar, but that's not recommended at all. I just might as well just wait for Bakshi to come up and run Bakshi Emrys. That's the best cavalry march, and that's also the only viable cavalry march. Then you might be asking, but MEOWER, what do I do about Hosk? What do I do about Thea? What do I do about Indus? And what do I do about Garwood? And I will answer you, don't worry. Garwood is useless, like I said, never use him. Thea is good, but there are just better commanders that fit marches right now. You can try to run a flying march of Atheist Thea, but Atheist is just so bad. So I just can't justify running an extra mage march. Maybe if you want to try a flying harassment march, you can run Atheist Thea, because they're both flying and they do decent damage. You can also run Craig Thea, which is also decent. However, Thea might not be as good as I initially thought. She gives great stats on paper, but she's just lacking a proper commander to synergize with. So I would recommend leaving Thea on the shelf for now and just wait for a proper legendary flying commander that she might synergize with. But she's only like viable at the moment running with other flying units. And well, the secondary flying commander, which is Atheist or Craig, are not as good as thought. You can also make an argument that once you awaken Thea and you awaken Indus, it would make a fantastic fifth support march. But by that time, a whole lot more commanders will come out, because Indus takes around a year or a year and a month in order to awaken her, since you can only get her shards from the Dragon Trail shop. Anyway, that's all for the pairings for now. So let's review. archers, top three marches, Nico Kinara, Kinara Hosk, and Nico Hosk. Also honorable mentions will be Kenara Guanwin, Nico Craig, and of course Guanwin Craig. For mages, by far the best and the easiest to obtain would be either Lilia Velian or Waldir Velian. If you are a more a sort of a spender, then Lilia Velian and Alwyn Waldir. For infantry, Madeline Nika, Nika Bakar. That's it for infantry. For cavalry, the only viable march would be um, Bakshi Emrys. That's it. That's the only actual viable cavalry march. You might say Alistar is good, but still, Alistar does not provide the same benefits Bakshi does, which makes cavalry even much better with the addition to the skill they had, which makes them immediately drop their rage skills when they hit a ranged march. And for support marches, I would say in the span, where's Span? There she is. Just for the heals and the buffs they provide for everyone, or in this Thea if both of them are awakened. That's for the pairings. Let's go through the best and easiest ways to level up the commanders. In episode 1, we discussed resource gathering and how it impacts the XP for commanders. There are also methods to gain even more XP easier. You can get it from the Dragon Trail, which I highly recommend you always push the Dragon Trail for as much and as far as possible. Here in SS1-2, the highest amount of stars is 240. Shout out to Duz. He's almost at 240. He's only missing one more star. These three I have not really been able to do because it's pretty hard and I'm not T5 just yet. And the other ways to gain XP is from farming Darklings. Remember when you farm Darklings, use the trick I showed in a different video. And there is also fort spamming. Now, there is a method to get the maximum rewards in forts here, as you can see, but I will make a video just for that. It will be a short video, but it will go through how to do that trick and use it and maximize as much rewards as you can from the forts. That's pretty much like the most simple ways to gain XP for any commanders. And the pairings for commanders, what to use them for and such. Some commanders are flexible, they fit different roles, but I would say focus on 2 to 3 marches first, set your foundation, and then slowly incorporate more marches and more commanders. Now, that's all for this video and episode 2 of Zero to Hero series. If you like this video, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends. You know, it always helps the channel to grow, and it will help me help you guys even more. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will see you on episode 3. Meow meow.